Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to episode 8 of Paranormal Axetivities with your host, Ben Axe. I apologize if I sound a little tired or worn out. I just got done throwing the softball around with my wife, which is kind of funny because I never really got into softball or baseball. As a matter of fact, I was in a baseball team when I was a kid and fucking hated it. I think first grade I was on like a t-ball team or something, and I thought it was stupid and I hated it, and I quit after the first year, and I haven't really played since. But my wife joined the team here lately, and so I started throwing around with her, got my own glove, and it's actually been kind of a fun little thing. I'm not terrible, I can actually catch and throw, so that's a pretty good accomplishment, I think, at 32. So I've been digging it. So we'll see where that goes. So, but yep, I am a little tired, a little winded, little hot, so bear with me. Yeah, so it was pretty nice. We're still day 175,000th of the quarantine with this corona stuff, so we're kind of seeing where that goes. So it's been nice getting outside and throwing the ball around. But yes, we have a pretty good show here lined up for you. Coming up here, we have an interview with Ed from OTR Paranormal Investigations. And so that's what I kind of want to talk about here before we get that interview rolling, is kind of explaining what a paranormal investigation is. I'll have yet to talk about that on this show, as I don't have a whole lot of experience with paranormal investigations. I've never been a part of one. I have been to several locations that warrant a paranormal investigation. Waverly Hills, Moonville Tunnel, I always just, if I can talk, as we have discussed, get these microphones off me, Mansfield Penitentiary, I mean, multiple places. Hell, I grew up in a small town that was surrounded by woods that we would always play in. I'm sure locations like that probably have some kind of spirit or ghost hanging out. But I never really done an investigation. Now, back in 2015, I had a investigation team come out to my house. We had a lot of paranormal stuff going on, and I know I keep talking about this story. I just never actually have told the story on this show. It has been told on the Moose Point podcast, which is a show I used to kind of still do, not really, but sometimes. And it's also been told on a podcast called Haunted AF. Highly recommend it. It's a great show. But on this show, I have yet to tell it, and I keep meaning to, but I just got distracted. My goal for this show was to have the very first episode be that story. It's a year and a long half story from August 2014 through October 2015, basically. However, when I started this show, I had the coronavirus, or most likely had the coronavirus. I already had the second and third episode done, ready to roll. I have yet to do the first episode, which was the introductory to who I am and that story, basically. But I had that. I was sick. I wanted to get the first episode done, but I didn't want to sit here for 45 minutes to an hour telling that story. So I just did my other basic stories from when I was growing up, and I don't honestly remember that episode. Like, I barely remember doing it just because of how out of it I was at that time. But I will make time. We'll go back and I will tell this whole story from beginning to end with probably more details than it requires. However, as of right now, you haven't heard it yet. But there was an investigation team at our house in June 2015, and that was my really only in-person live experience with the investigation team, and it was really neat to see. The lead investigator I respected, I appreciated. The rest of his team wasn't that fond of for a few reasons. And we'll discuss that when that conversation comes. But the tools they use was pretty cool. And if you're not familiar with what paranormal investigations are, it's in the title. You're investigating the paranormal. But there are some tools that you probably wouldn't think of. One tool that I was introduced back then was called a K2 EMF meter, which I've told you guys about on the show already. But it's basic. It just reads energy, and they claim that if there's a spirit around or a ghost around, it can communicate with you through that tool, kind of like a Ouija board, but not. It lights up if they're there. You can ask it a question; it'll light up if it, yes or no, however you want to do it. There are spirit boxes that they take radio waves and they reverse them back to you. Basically, is the easy explanation for it, and they can communicate with you through spirit boxes. And there's cameras. We used motion detectors at the house during that time. Well, they did, I should say. So they had cameras set up, and if there's a motion, we'd go in there and look at it, rewind the tape, see what's going on. We had voice recorders lined up, and you can use your voice recorder, you can talk to it, and then listen back, and they might talk to you, through the feedback there. I mean, all kinds of little basic tools. And to be honest, I'm not really one that can tell you all of these details, and I didn't really look it up either, because that's the point of my show. This show's not going to be me Googling stuff and then telling you those things. I mean, a little bit here and there if there's something I want you guys to learn or know if it makes sense for that show. But I'm not going to sit here, here's what an investigation team is, and then read you a bullet point that I got from Google. I'm going to tell you what I know, at least what I think I know, and then, go from there, and we'll keep learning what that is, because I don't know a lot of times. I just think I do. I say some stuff, get proven wrong. That happens in my life all of the time, because I am often wrong, and that's okay. But, so we're going to have Ed on from OTR Paranormal. It's, and this is the first investigation lead that I've talked to since I started this show. And he drives his truck around the country, and in that, using that career, he is able to get around the country and investigate a lot of these places. And to me, that's a pretty neat thing, and a pretty badass thing, actually, because I'd love to get out there and, investigate cemeteries, hospitals, asylums, houses. This country is huge, and there's all kinds of stories from all of these states. But, I'm limited. I work in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I am lucky enough to be in Ohio, which is considered to be one of the most haunted states. But every state could probably be considered the most haunted state, so it's whatever. So it's a pretty cool thing, I think, to have an investigator on here, and I'm pretty excited to learn about it. So instead of me just saying what I think I know, let's go ahead and let's get Ed on the phone from OTR Paranormal. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Just living the dream here in Ohio. I know you're a driver on the road. How's Florida treating you down there? I know that's where you said you ended up tonight.
Well, I got slowed down a little bit. They apparently have got a virus checkpoint in the way station now. So anybody driving a car, they're veering all the traffic off, and it kind of slowed me down a little bit.
Oh, wow.
I got to one of my favorite truck stops. I didn't get the one I was aiming at, but I got to one of my favorites anyway.
Well, that works, I guess. I was going to ask how this coronavirus has been treating your line of work. Is it kind of slowing you down, keeping you more busy? Has there been any change at all?
Well, the freight is still good. I'm a refrigerated hauler, so I've always got, there's always, food that needs to be transported someplace. But we've gotten slowed down a lot with the loading and unloading process, because they're not letting the drivers in nearly as fast. So we get in there, and of course everybody gets stacked up on the dock, and that kind of slows things down quite a bit.
No. Well, fair enough. I know it's a crazy time we're living in, so we'll get through it here one of these days, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, from what we're hearing, they're already getting a decline in it. So
that's good.
As the weather warms up, things should improve.
Yeah, that's good.
I did everybody all the way around.
Yep, absolutely. I did hear that the warm weather kind of affects it in a positive way for us, so we'll get there.
Yeah, well, it's like any flu virus. You get in the warm weather and it dies off, and everybody can go back to normal.
Yep, absolutely.
This one here, the media just got a hold of it and turned it into,
absolutely.
a really crazy mess.
Yeah, it really got blown up there. But hey, that's life, I suppose. And I appreciate you being on the show today. Actually, you're the first paranormal investigator to be part of the show, so I'm very excited about that, and I'm really appreciative of you taking the time and hanging out with me today and kind of telling us what a paranormal investigator does and kind of your history and story here.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I'm your first. I'll try and be gentle with you.
I appreciate it. I have dealt with one paranormal investigation team about 6 years ago. We had like a ghost in our house or whatever. That's a whole story in itself. But it was kind of interesting to see them like do their work. You can see it on TV and you can watch like ghost hunters or whatever, but to actually see it in real life was a different experience and something that I can understand how you'd want to do it going forward all of the time,
Right.
And so
I actually started this whole thing and kind of expanded upon it because of the Ghost Hunters and Ghost Nation and Ghost Adventures, because from what I was seeing, of course the YouTube stuff too, the guys weren't finishing everything off. In my mind, they weren't finishing everything off, and they were calling things evidence, which technically, scientifically speaking, is not evidence. But
right. Yeah, I get
so
that.
I kind of get in trouble with the famous guys because I keep telling them, no, it's not evidence, and they get mad at me because they get paid the big bucks.
Well, that's fair. That's kind of one of my problems with the TV shows too. I had a guy on the other day, Keith Lindner, actually. He wrote a book about some poltergeist issues he had in his house, and he had a Ghost Adventures, I believe, came out. And like when you're on a TV show like that, you're kind of pushing and you're making it for TV. And like with any kind of show or professional wrestling specifically, if you're rushing for TV, it's not necessarily the real stuff. Like this kind of investigation takes time and patience, and it's not really meant for TV. At least the whole investigation anyway is not meant for TV, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Well, a lot of it is done for shock value and of course ratings, because that's what sells the commercial time.
Absolutely.
And pays everybody's paycheck. I just get disappointed with some of the shows because they go too much over the top and they make it a little bit too much Hollywood.
Right.
And they don't break everything down the way that it should be. Now, I'm not a scientist. I don't have a college degree in any kind of paranormal or parapsychology field. Well, yeah, you can't get it in the United States anyway, but I've always had a scientific bend towards things ever since I was a little kid, and so when it comes to paranormal stuff, paranormal is a very wide field. I mean, it covers everything from ghosts to Bigfoot to alien life to UFOs, myths and legends and stuff like that. Paranormal is a very big field, but whenever everybody tries to narrow it down to being just ghosts, it's like, no, there's a little bit more to it than that.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, that's why ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot, like everything is definitely in that category, and they're all kind of fun in their own way. Or each thing is. I'm more intrigued with the ghost aspect of the paranormal. That's where I've always, I think, have the connection with or sensitive to. But yeah, it's absolutely pretty much anything that's not normal would be paranormal. Correct?
Right. Everything, whatever doesn't fit into the normal, the technical definition of normal is paranormal. It's beyond our understanding.
Oh, yep, absolutely. So what got you into becoming a paranormal investigator or starting your team over at OTR Paranormal?
Well, my whole life, I've always been surrounded by paranormal happenings. I mean, even when I was very young, I was susceptible to precosmic visions. I would see things happen just before they actually occurred, and of course, I've had several UFO sightings. Oh, wow. Matter of fact, Sunday I saw a UAP as I was going through Beaumont, Texas, which was kind of neat.
What is a UAP? What does that mean?
A UAP, unidentified unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Oh, gotcha. I gotcha.
It's the new official term that the government uses.
Oh, cool. So instead of UFO, it's UAP?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, UFO is an unidentified flying object, which could be a bird or plane or anything that's an actual object. But a UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, is something that you see that you're not quite sure whether it was an object or what it was.
Oh, gotcha. That's kind of cool. Yeah, that's a new term for me. That's awesome. I like to learn. That's the point of the show.
Yeah, they've actually started the terminology just recently. It's probably within the last 5-10 years. And it really didn't hit the media outlets until I think was it 2014 when the Navy pilots recorded a confrontation that they had off of the East Coast.
I did see that a while back. Yeah, that was an interesting story for sure.
And it's not really good footage, but then again, it's combat footage, so it's not going to come very clear anyway.
Right. I mean, yeah, when it comes to the military, I live in Dayton. No, not in Dayton. I live near Dayton for the Wright Pat Air Force Base. And there's always claims of UFOs up here, and most of the time it's going to be from that Air Force base. So,
yeah, I got a woman that I talked to on Twitter that she's been recording some very interesting phenomena flying past her house, and her yard camera has been catching it. And I'm trying to coordinate with her to get out that way and see if I can't help film it from a different angle and see if we can't figure out exactly what it is and collaborate and what's the word I'm looking for? Validate what she's been recording for several months now.
oh wow, that's kind of interesting. I may have seen that on Twitter, actually. So I know I follow you on there. I may have seen... That sounds familiar. I may have ran it past it the other day. That's crazy. I never seen a UFO myself. My dad has a story from North Carolina from when I was a kid. He claims him and another guy saw two objects kind of fly at each other from opposite directions over the ocean and then take off in the same direction. It was kind of an interesting story.
That sounds interesting.
He's been telling that story for... probably 25 years now, if maybe more than that.
Yeah.
But it's cool. So, I know you said you've been experiencing ghost stories, your entire life. So, do you think you're, sensitive to the ghost side? I have, a belief that some people are open to it, some people are closed off to it. So, would you say you're pretty open to it?
Well, it's always been... for me, it's always just been been a natural part of my life. And, I've always questioned about what it is. Probably, I would say, somewhere around 1967, maybe. I was still, probably maybe about 5 years old. We lived in a farmhouse out in New York State, and I came down the stairs one morning after, we had a big thunderstorm roll through, and I remember looking out the window out back, and it would look out into the sweet pea field, and I would see... And the whole field was littered with these thunderbolts. Did you ever see the cartoon thunderbolts look like two Z's connected on both ends?
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely.
And there was all of these thunderbolts were stuck in the ground in the sweet pea field. And I've never been able to, it's not a natural phenomenon, but I've never been able to identify exactly what it was. And I haven't run across anybody else that's had the same experience. So that's the major mystery in my life that kind of started everything rolling, was wanting to know what was going on.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. That sounds like a pretty crazy thing. I've never had anything like that happen to me. So, yeah, that's pretty wild. Yeah. You said you're about 5 years old?
Being 5 years old, I didn't record it or write it down or anything like that. So it's just a memory that I have.
Sure.
So which makes researching it a little bit harder because you don't know exactly what anybody else would classify it as.
No, absolutely. That's another thing that you can type in something. Like when I figured out that I had sleep paralysis, I didn't know the term sleep paralysis. So I had to Google being awake while asleep, basically, and hope something popped up. In my case, luckily, it did pop up. But, I know exactly what you're saying.
Are you saying sleep paralysis?
Oh, yeah. When I was in college, I started getting sleep paralysis, but I didn't know that term or what it was. So I was like, how do I Google it? Because it's a weird feeling that you can't really say with words. At least at that time, I couldn't. So I just Googled being asleep but awake. Basically, is what I typed in, and in my case, I got lucky and it popped up. But something like that, you can't really Google. I suppose it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I didn't know what sleep paralysis was until I actually had an attack of it one time, and that was an interesting experience too. I was a lot older. That was only happened maybe about 20 years ago.
Oh wow!
It was I was living in upstate New York, a little town called Shenango Forks, and I woke up for some reason, and I just remember that I couldn't move. I could move my eyes. I couldn't move the rest of my body, and I haven't figured out yet whether it was actually an alien encounter or if it was just maybe a spectral encounter, but I do remember seeing 5 figures looking at me with large dark eyes.
Holy!
And then I fell back to sleep. So I didn't feel scared or anything, but I do remember seeing these faces looking at me and then going back to sleep. And then when I woke back up, everything was fine. But
so my question to you is, how do you see that kind of face looking at you and not be scared? I think I would be terrified.
I don't. It's kind of weird. I've never been. When those things happen, I don't get excited about it. I stay very calm and I try to observe what's going on. Try to wrap my head around it, as it were.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I've been experiencing ghost stuff pretty much my entire life as well, and I still get a little excited. I try to be cool, and with some things I'm cool and calm and collected, and then other times, depending what's going on, I get a little bit more excited and heart starts beating a little bit faster. Just kind of situational for me, I would say. All right, and then so as a paranormal investigator with your investigation team, OTR Paranormal, like, so what does that entail exactly? Like, I know you've experienced alien ghost phenomenon your entire life, basically. So, like, as an investigation team, what do you guys do?
The premise behind our team and our investigation is we are trying to move paranormal investigation, paranormal research out of the category of pseudoscience and move it into being actual theoretical science. And so we're looking at any kind of like haunting case, Sasquatch sighting, or UFO alien encounter, and trying to recreate and recapture the footage or the data that the team or the person who experienced it did, so that we can validate their experience and we can actually create an evidentiary file for everybody to fall back onto. That's why I say it's like I get frustrated with all these teams like on YouTube and everything else, because they go out and they investigate, and when they do their review of their data, as soon as they hear something, they start screaming that it's evidence, and it's like, no, it's not evidence, because you have to there's certain steps, there's certain processes in the scientific research that you have to follow in order for something to become evidence. You know, evidence is proving or disproving a theory, and just because you capture something on tape or on video doesn't necessarily mean that you've proven anything. You've just captured something very compelling that needs to be further explored.
That's a good point. That's I mean, it's kind of like, you know, in a court case with police officers trying to gather evidence, you can't use everything and things can be disputed and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of the same type of investigation. Does that sound accurate, kind of?
Yeah, because I mean, with any kind of investigation, you have to, especially if you're approaching it from a scientific viewpoint where you're trying to prove something, you have to follow a very critical step called falsification, and a lot of teams do it. They call it debunking, but you have to look at everything that you've collected as can this be faked in some way? Can this be an error? Like people that use the spirit box, which is a great little tool. It's still new technology, but it's not proven technology, because everything comes over that little radio box can actually be duplicated over a regular radio.
Right.
So,
and I've actually used a spirit box, and it's one of those things. I believe it worked, but at the same time, in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, it could just be, you know, the radio signals happen to match up, or me making them match up in my own head.
Well, see, and that's where you have to go back. If you're doing a spirit box session, you have to go back with it, and you have to recreate the same environment that you had when you got that first answer. You have to ask the same question and get the same response, or you have to get a more detailed response to what you got before.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah, because just because you go in and you say, "Is anybody here?" and you get Tom, that doesn't necessarily mean that Tom is actually there. Tom could be, you know, the DJ making his announcement, and it just happened to get caught on the sweep.
Right.
So you have to go back at another time and ask that same question and see if you get the same response, or if you get a more detailed response that falls in line with that.
Yep, that's interesting. That's a good point. When I used it, I only used it the one time, so we did not verify it. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience.
And that's where I get into the argument with like Zach Baggins and everybody else, because they're going out, they're going to these places, and they're showing these really neat captures, and they're declaring it as evidence, but they're not following scientific protocol to prove that it's actually evidence.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, and that's the thing with this kind, in any kind of investigation. Really, you have to have due diligence, and you just can't say it's evidence. You have to be able to prove it's evidence, and that could be very frustrating. So you said they all give you crap about it for getting on their case.
Oh yeah, I've gotten like Adam Berry that used to be with Ghost Hunters. He actually blocked me on Twitter, and then thought twice about it, and then removed the block, and we don't follow each other anymore.
That's hilarious.
Because we got into it about that, Chip Coffey and we got into it really bad one time, and he completely blocked me, and and had all of his little followers ganging up on me and everything else, and it's like, look, you can't call it evidence unless it actually is evidence.
Makes sense. We can have that in common. One thing I like to do in my co-host on my wrestling podcast, he's blocked by several wrestlers for the same kind of idea. Like, they'll say some dumb stuff or get kind of arrogant about something, and we'll rebuttal that, and they take it personal and block us or whatever. So it's kind of something in common there.
And it's funny because as soon as they have celebrity status, they get very touchy about things. The only one the one that I can say that has never gotten touchy with me about anything has been Josh Gates. He's always been but of course he's a archaeologist. I mean, so he understands the concept of scientifically proving whether something's there or not.
And that makes sense. With that kind of background, see, those are the kind of people I would trust more than just, your everyday people. Like, if they have some kind of, I guess the word I'm looking for is credibility. If they can back that up, then I'll definitely take their word over some guy on whatever ghost show on the Travel Channel who's just doing it just to be on TV. And that's my problem with the TV shows. I feel like a lot of those guys are just trying to be on TV, and they'll do anything to get the ratings, and that's why I don't trust. So
yeah, yep. And it's like I get a lot of people that try to cite things from like Ed Warren, and I disagree with a lot of Mr. Warren's theories and philosophies, because quite frankly, everything that he wrote was based on Catholic protocols and the fact that he was making money doing it.
That's fair. To be honest with you, I don't know a whole lot about the Warrens other than, I've seen like the Conjuring movies and stuff, but I'm sure that's like, fabricated in a lot of ways. But I did know that he was a Catholic background or whatever, so I could see that, and definitely if he's making money.
But yeah, Hollywood takes a lot of creative license with the stories. But if you ever watch any kind of footage of Ed Warren in action, he'll sit down and he'll turn on a tape recorder, and something will happen, and he'll immediately say it's demonic. And it's like, no, dude, it's not demonic. It's like,
it takes more than 3 seconds to figure that out, I'm sure. That's crazy.
Yeah, and that's definitely all church-driven.
Right, and that's one of those things, too. Like, I'm not necessarily a religious person. I grew up in the church, but, there's all kinds of religions. Who's to say which ghost or which spirit has what religion? What's it based off of? And I heard that some demons just mock what you necessarily believe. So just because you're a Christian, that demon's going to mock Christian backgrounds, or if you're a Muslim, that will mock Muslim backgrounds, or whatever you believe or don't believe, they'll mock you personally, not the actual religion itself. Does that sound familiar to you at all?
I've had some very serious disagreements with religious leaders concerning life after death and demons and demonology and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I believe that. Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of disagreements with the church, so I could definitely see that being one of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Catholic Church is the oldest Christian religion in existence, and they've made their fortune off of convincing people that what they're saying is right. And if you go against what they're saying, then you're immediately labeled a heretic, and they get all kinds of upset with you.
Yep, absolutely. So that's why I don't go to church anymore. That's one of the reasons, anyway.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I became an ordained minister, is because I don't believe in what they're teaching.
Exactly. I was actually had a discussion with this at work the other day. Like, I'm not against church religion at all. I just don't agree with the churches that I grew up in, and so I'm not going to go. But yeah, I'm totally not against religion whatsoever.
Yeah, and I don't knock anybody for being religious or being a Christian. I mean, all the more power to you. You're believing in a higher power. That there's nothing wrong with that. But when you turn your higher power into being dollar bills and the bottom line being black, then you're no longer teaching religion. You're teaching fiscal management.
Absolutely. And then it turns into a cult-like thing sometimes, and I just can't get on board with anything that resembles that. So
Right.
I'll do my own thing going forward.
And there's enough Joel Osteens out there that we don't need any more.
That's a fact. Absolutely. All right. So as part of the OTR Paranormal, so do you guys take calls from people who have like haunted experiences or haunted houses, or how does that work?
We've gotten a few inquiries about coming out and checking out private residences. We don't get a whole lot of them. We've only gotten a couple. The one direct request that we got was about a woman had acquired. I don't want to give away too much information because I don't want to expose who she was.
Absolutely. You can say as little as you need to.
She acquired something that she felt had a dark spirit attached to it, and she wanted to know how she could remove it herself. And we advised her that she needs to. There are people that specialize in that sort of thing, and she should contact them directly. It's something that she shouldn't attempt on her own, because if she has no experience with it, it would actually be more dangerous than if she just left it alone.
Right. We had an incident like that. I kind of mentioned it earlier. I was in a house back in 2014 through 2015, and we thought it might be demonic. And we had a friend who kind of, she dealt with spirit boxes, and she was very into the paranormal stuff, very sensitive. And we kind of explained to her what was going on, and she was like, I'm not coming to your house. I don't deal with demons, but here's a phone number for you to contact, whoever we contacted. So I definitely know that dealing with demons isn't something for ordinary, unknowledgeable people.
Yeah, and I think also, people misidentify demons. They jump at everything. If they hear a voice that sounds growly or whatever, they immediately identify it as a demon, and it's not necessarily the fact. And a lot of that comes from, the Hollywood concept has brainwashed a lot of people, and of course, the church has done its fair share of damage to people when it comes to misidentifying what is actually a demon and what isn't. And so, anytime we get into a discussion with somebody about demons and demonology, I try to educate them a little bit and point out to them where the mistakes are in their understanding.
No, yeah. So what is a demon exactly? What's the difference between a demon and like a spirit?
Well, the Christian view coming down, they label any of the fallen angels as being demons, and they painted them into being these grotesque, twisted up creatures, and tried to use the excuse that because they fell from God's grace, they no longer look nice because they're no longer in God's light. And it's like, and I have to explain it's like, well, if that were true, there wouldn't be any pretty humans, because we've all fallen from grace from the moment we were born.
That's a good point.
So and my philosophy is that you can't have good without evil. There's always going to be an evil creature, and of course, humans themselves create evil on their own. Because I mean, just look at some of the the mass murderers, the child molesters, and whatnot like that. They're the very definition of evil, in living evil. It's not that far of a step to find an evil spirit. And I think that they've always existed. They've always been. They make the balance between good and evil. They make what life is.
Oh, fair enough.
I don't think that they don't have any goal, like as everybody teaches. Like they don't have the goal of making men fall from God's grace, because men have already fallen from God's grace. They just exist to do what they do. But when you get into a situation where you're working on a paranormal case, or you're working in a haunted house or whatever, and you come across something that sounds like a growling noise, it's not necessarily an evil spirit threatening to attack you. It could be, for example, I've got a recording where I can hear a growl on EVP, and if you slow it down and reverse it, it's actually saying the word Sydney. If you play it forward and at regular speed, it's a growl noise. It doesn't make any sense.
What did it say when you I'm sorry, I missed it. What did you say when you slowed it down?
I had to slow it down and reverse it, and when I did that, it says Sydney. It's either describing a name or it's describing a place.
That's interesting. Wow.
So it was a very interesting capture, and it took a little while to figure it out, because I had to separate it from the background noise, slow it down. Kept trying to isolate exactly what it was doing, but at forward speed, it wasn't making any sense. So when I reversed it, it came out to be saying Sydney.
That's crazy.
And it was a male voice too. So yeah, it was an interest. That actually turned out that whole case started off as being something completely different. It started off as a seance, and a former member of my team had turned on their digital recorder, and they had sent me the recordings of what had gone on during this so-called seance. And as it turns out, the seance was fake, but stuff that was going on in the background wasn't.
Fair enough. That's crazy.
Yep. It's like I caught the woman who was claiming to be a medium and was talking to this girl who allegedly was talking to this girl's sister. She whispered to the girl that something that she said came from her and not from the spirits. So it was like, be careful what you're doing, because the microphones will catch you.
That's fair. They don't lie. Video cameras and audio do not lie.
Yep.
All right, cool. And then do you guys also go around and do paranormal investigations at like old buildings and places like that? Things like that.
I'm out on the road. The way things actually started off is when I first announced the idea for my show that we're still in the middle of producing. When I first brought out the idea about doing Over the Road Paranormal, and I told everybody what I'm going to do is I'm going to be traveling around the country in my truck, and I want to meet up with teams around the country and go to the places where you've done investigations. Here's the data that you've collected, and see if we can't recreate it, capture it again, so that way we can validate what you already have and what you're calling evidence. And right away, I got bombarded with all kinds of teams that wanted to get involved on it.
I bet.
And as soon as I started doing all the paperwork, because I want to make sure that it's done right and it's done legal, and I started sending out contracts and whatnot like that, most everybody disappeared.
Oh.
So I had to kind of they disappeared for a couple of reasons. They disappeared because they didn't want to give up what they technically called the right to their evidence, and then which was the biggest reason. A lot of them just didn't want to, because it was theirs, they didn't want to share it. And it's like, well, how do you expect to have anybody else validate what you captured if you're not going to share it?
Or what are you doing with it? I mean, if you're gonna have a show about that, that's how you get that out there. What's the point of hoarding it if you're not gonna, prove it and replicate it and get it out in the open world? What's the point? I don't understand that.
Right. And I'm not claiming it, I'm not claiming their stuff as mine. What I'm going in and filming, trying to recreate what they already got.
Right. So, I mean, it's not even, that's fair.
Pardon me?
That's a really interesting idea. So you said you're still producing that show?
Yeah, we're still trying to produce it because we lost a lot of the teams that were going to do it. And then some really weird stuff happened with a few people. Like we had one woman dropped out completely because we were talking to her former team about doing a show with them too. So it was like, I understand that there might be hard feelings between you and that team, but that's going to be two separate instances. We're not going to be combining the two. But she absolutely refused.
Yeah.
So we lost her and the other team because of that one.
That's too bad. I mean,
so in the meantime, what we've done is, as I travel around the country, I try to find spots that I can get into with the truck and, pull an investigation myself, like Parker's Crossroads Battlefield up in Tennessee. And I was just recently out at the Apache Death Cave out in Arizona. And we're still analyzing footage on that. So
when you do that, are you by yourself when you do these investigations when you're out on the road with your truck? Or are you with somebody else? When you're out on the truck and do these investigations, are you solo, or do you have a partner with you? How's that going?
I'm currently solo. It's like I could try to find something that I can, I got to go on, and I look at my route and I look and see what's close to my route, and then of course look at Google Maps and bring up the satellite imagery to make sure that I can get the truck in and out without damaging it or being late on my schedule. And then I'll go in and I got a couple of cases of equipment that I carry with me, and I drag everything out, set it up, and do my investigation, and then send my recordings and my footage back to the team, and everybody does the analysis on it. And then after we do the analysis, then we, which is what we're doing right now, is we're doing analysis and post-production work, putting everything together so that we can actually start uploading and releasing episodes.
No, very cool. I'll definitely be on the lookout for that. If you can think of one, what's the craziest thing you've seen while out on the road, paranormal wise?
Well, like I say, like Sunday I saw that the UAP, which was really, it caught me by surprise because I'm usually always scanning the skies anyway, and I just happened to be going through Beaumont, Texas, and I was talking to my brother on the phone, and I caught. At first, it was out of the corner of my eye. I caught a glimmer of something moving across the bottom of the clouds, and it was almost like a skipping stone, but inverted. And I didn't get a good enough look at it to say that it was an actual object. All I saw was a couple of bright flashes, and my brother suggested maybe it was lightning, but it wasn't moving right. And the color of the light was wrong to be lightning.
That's awesome. That's one thing I miss. I grew up in a small town. I could see the sky all the time. Now I live near Cincinnati, and I don't see sky ever. So it's a kind of a bummer.
Well, this was actually during the day, which was
wow.
What it made it really neat.
That's even better.
It was very bright. It was very bright, whatever it was that went moving across there. And then just recently, I was up in southern Maine, which is a hot spot for Sasquatch, and I was hoping to actually take a little bit of time and go wandering out into the woods there and see if I could, maybe spot something while I was up there. But unfortunately, a gale moved in, and between the wind and the rain, I wasn't stepping outside of the truck for nothing.
That's fair. I don't blame you.
to go exploring in the woods.
Oh, fair enough. All right, awesome, sir. Well, hey, I appreciate it. I think that's going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. We're getting down here on time. So I appreciate you being on the show. You can find Ed at OTR Paranormal on Twitter at OTR Paranormal. You can find him on Facebook at Over the Road. Email at otrparanormal@gmail.com. And definitely check out his website, otrparanormal.com. Actually, I checked out that website earlier today, and it's got some cool stuff on there.
Yeah, everything is pretty much a work in progress right now.
Nope, I understand. It's the same here, so I completely understand. All right, sir, well, I appreciate you being on the show. I apologize for the technical issues we're having here. I'm not sure what the deal is, but we'll make it work. So
well, I'm glad you had me on, and anytime you want me back, just give me a holler, and we'll talk about any other cool stuff that I have to come across.
Absolutely. Now that we're kind of introduced to each other, I'll definitely hit you back up and get some cool stories from you for sure.
Oh yeah.
All right.
'Cause I haven't even hit you with some of the good stuff yet.
I know. That's next time for sure. I appreciate you, sir. So you stay safe out there and be careful with this Corona stuff and be careful with all the crazies out there on the road.
All right, thank you very much.
Have a good night.
I'm actually on my way home for 3 days off. So.
Well, there you go. Can't beat that. All right,
Nope.
take care.
All right, thank you.
So huge thanks to Ed for being on the show. That was a great interview. I had a great time. And don't forget to check out Ed at OTR Paranormal on Twitter, Over the Road on Facebook. You can email Ed at otrparanormal@gmail.com. And definitely check out their website at otrparanormal.com. Again, stands for Over the Road Paranormal. That was a great time. And I hope, I learned a lot from that episode. I think it was kind of a neat thing to do. Episode, I should say, interview. It was, I think it's a really neat thing to drive around the country. For one, I love driving, and if I could be a driver as a career, I would do it again in a heartbeat. So yeah, that's a great, awesome tool, I should say, or a great path. I don't even know what the fuck I'm trying to say, but yeah, it was a pretty cool thing. And again, Ed, thanks a lot. I can't wait to have Ed back on. Off air, we talked a little bit about a big investigation he did at a cemetery in Fort Myers. And it sounds like a pretty cool thing. So next time we have him on, we'll definitely hear about that. And it's going to be awesome. So one thing I have to say before we go, I can't leave you guys hanging. The paranormal activity of the week. Nothing too crazy. I feel like saging the house a few times has really made a difference. But we do have one thing. Earlier in the week, I did an impromptu episode with Danae, my wife. And that's going to be released probably another 2 weeks from now. I'm backlogged. I'm backlogged, guys, so bear with me. But probably in 2 weeks or so, we're going to have that episode aired. But during that episode, we had a lot of EMF readings on the K2 meter. Basically, she would talk about her family, and it would just light up. And I mean light up. It lit up more than I've ever seen it light up before. It was nuts. And we had it set away. We had it in a place I know it could have been a computer or my phone or the microphones or anything. It was in a lone spot and it was just lighting up. I did not get a picture as I was kind of tranced, I guess. Not tranced, but I was in the moment and that's a problem with me, and that's probably one of the reasons I'd be a bad paranormal investigator. Because I just get caught up in the moment and don't think about hitting the record button or taking that picture or that kind of stuff. But that was lit up pretty well. And then during that interview, I went to the bathroom. And as I was in the bathroom, in the downstairs bathroom, as I was using the restroom, the lights in the bathroom just started flickering hardcore. And that doesn't happen. We had the lights flickering that one time that I already told you guys about. And then this time, right after we saw the K2 light up. So it was pretty wild, and that's the paranormal activity of the week. So if I can talk, I'm all worked up from that story. So let me know what you guys think. I'm not even going to edit that. Screw it. Let me know what you guys think. You can find me at Paranormal Axetivities on Facebook. Follow me at Axetivities on Twitter. There's a YouTube page. It's not really made yet. It does exist, but there's really nothing on it. But that's going to get built up as we move forward. And you can email me at paranormalaxpodcast@gmail.com. So do all that. Follow me. You can keep listening to me on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Apple. I guess is what they actually call iTunes now. They change it all the time. So whatever whatever platform you like, I'm probably there because I'm on most of them. And going forward, let's just keep learning together.